Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. We'd like to welcome Zmanda and Dennis Eiler, Senior Manager of Technical Support, who will be joining us today. And we're excited today to talk about best practices for backup. In getting ready for World Backup Day, we wanted to give everybody some idea on what are the best practices around backup, what are the best ways to protect your data. So that's kind of where we will begin. And Dennis, I'll let you kind of give the agenda and introduce Zmanda.
Hello, my name is Dennis Eiler, and I work for Zmanda, a software backup package. We provide enterprise class software for backup of PCs, Macs, and all Linux-based hosts. And Eric, would you want me to go through the balance of the slide?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So we're going to talk about the driving factors that drive backup decisions. Generally, it's cost versus capability. We're going to discuss the rule of three as far as data protection is concerned. And we're going to discuss why we're going to back up to tape libraries and why that still makes sense. Also talk about media rotation policies, balancing the amount of media with the amount of protection that's available. We'll also talk about types of backups, both full and incremental. And we're going to touch on compression strategies too, which seems to be something that a lot of folks are somewhat confused by. And we'll complete it with a question and answer period. Eric?
And real quick, if anybody has any questions, they can go ahead and answer them or pose them in the questions box that you'll notice in your GoToWebinar section. All right, so then this is a great partnership that SpectraLogic has had for quite a while, but we've recently passed some certification testing, which Dennis will touch on later. But one of the keys that Spectra brings to the table is our rock-solid hardware solutions on the back end. We have really ingrained ourselves in the second-tier archive and backup storage solutions. And with the intelligence that we put in our hardware, as well as the focus on data protection and data availability, it's really where Spectra has found its niche in product set. And partnering up with a company like Zmanda that really understands the backup world for automated data retention and disaster recovery, as well as just flexible recovery that you can get with their software, has really made a great partnership and a really solid, fully integrated solution. Dennis, you want to touch on some of the customers that Zmanda has out there?
Yes. So we have customers such as BP, NASA, Boeing, Hewlett-Packard, Texas A&M, Staples, State of Hawaii, as well as Berkeley and Rutgers. We have quite a bit in the education market.
Yeah, and we have a heavy overlap with a lot of the customers that we have as well, not just in the actual customers themselves, but the vertical markets that we service. SpectraLogic has well over 20,000 libraries installed across the world. We do business worldwide, have a strong focus in universities, research, high-performance computing, as well as media and entertainment, and the general IT space. So we've really had a lot of rock-solid solutions that have been able to be taken to a lot of different areas through a lot of different organizations. So as Dennis had mentioned before, there are a lot of driving factors as to why people need to protect their data. Data loss is an incredibly problematic thing that a lot of organizations have. We have found a lot of stats, but some of them really jump off the page. As far as 60% of companies that experience data loss shut down within 6 months. It's really hard to overcome the loss of data. So protecting that data is at the forefront of every organization's kind of mandate for data protection. Ransomware has become something that has just really jumped to the front of minds of a lot of people, because there have been a lot of instances where organizations' data has been held ransom, and we see that even small companies lose over $100,000 in downtime. We're going to see here in a minute the amount that they actually have to pay for the ransom as well. So when you couple those together, ransomware can be a crippling event to happen to any organization. Everybody wants to reduce costs, not only your CapEx, but your OpEx costs, and then improve staff efficiencies. So these are things, again, that are driving the need for data protection, the need to back up your data. Disaster recovery. This is something that nobody wants to experience, but you have to plan for, because if it does happen, if you're not ready to restore your data for a disaster, then you're going to be in a world of hurt. So 68% of small businesses don't have a disaster recovery plan. It's staggering when we hear about not only natural disasters, but human disasters that can pair in with it as well. There are a lot of different elements out there that can attack your data. And then there's the general hardware failures. There's something that all hardware eventually will fail. And whenever you look at the thought of 140,000 hard drives failing each week in the United States, this is something that's happening more often than people think. And without a way to protect and get your data back, some way to find a steady workflow that allows you to restore your data if it's lost or if a hard drive fails, then you're stuck with downtime, and you're stuck with either having to recreate that data or find a way to continue to press on without that data ever being able to be brought back. So ransomware, again, is something that we see a lot of, and we're seeing it more often because it's becoming more popular. So 70% of executives surveyed say that they're willing to pay and have paid upwards of $10,000 to ransomware hackers. Another 20% say that they'd admitted to paying over $40,000. And this is just to get the data unencrypted, bring it back to workable state, and then you still have to restore it and begin to work with it. So there is a lot of downtime associated with this, as we saw before. Hundreds of $1,000s in downtime, and then you start pairing on $10, $20, $30, $40,000 to just unencrypt your data. These are unplanned expenses that people will have to deal with. And then 70% of the organizations say that they don't have another way and they have to pay the ransom. So you don't want to be one of the statistics. Ransomware is found in almost 40% of the spam messages sent in 2016. If you think that you're immune to it, this should show you that you're not. Everybody is on the hook for ransomware. And there's really a safe way to do it, and that's by having an offline copy. The nature of tape really helps you avoid becoming a statistic. Tape provides the off-site as well as offline storage that you need to protect your data, because when it's offline, it can't be encrypted. So some of the best practices to avoid these potential threats to your data that Dennis had touched on earlier, but we'll go through, and we consider these really solid best practices that have been around for a while and have, again, come to the forefront because of some of these threats that we've just talked about. The 3-2-1 rule, backing up to a tape library, backing up to solid hardware in general, but the advantages that tape has above some of the other options that you have out there. Media rotation is a key feature to have with your backups. And then different types of backups, because not all of them are created equal, and not all of them are the same for every organization. And then figuring out compression strategies. Not all data is compressible, but when you have those advantages, there are things that you need to consider when looking at compression. So the 3-2-1 rule. This one has been around for a while. The basic concepts behind it are to keep 3 different copies of your data, keep it on 2 different types of media, so tape and disk and cloud, tape and cloud. Just 2 different types to provide what we call genetic diversity, a diversity in your storage media, and then one of them off-site. So this is a way to prevent from disaster recovery. So if there's an event that happens in your data center, whether it's a natural disaster or a human one, if something is stored off-site, then it won't be affected by that. And we've seen a lot of different manipulations to this, but Spectra has really latched on to this 3-2-1-1 rule. So we add another one. This additional one ties to an offline copy. This is really important, again, when we talk about ransomware and all of these other things. Air gap is a great term for that offline copy. When there is no way to physically access it, then there's no way to encrypt it, to manipulate the data. So this is where best practices really come in, having your 3 different copies on 2 different types of media. One of them's off-site and one of them's offline. The off-site and offline, they can be a same copy if that off-site one is stored in a vault or something like that. But the key here is an offline copy. It really protects your data, and it protects anybody from being able to access it. Without physically putting that tape in a library, there's no way to encrypt it and move on to hold your data ransom. And then Dennis, you want to talk about some of the advantages with backup to tape libraries?
Yes, there still is a place in the backup world for tape libraries. This particular chart shows the stringency of the recovery objective and the recovery time objective as opposed to cost. And we can see from this chart that backup to tape is still the most cost-effective method of providing backup while still balancing the stringency of the recovery time option or objectives and recovery point objectives. And it goes all the way up. I mean, you can back up to disk or virtual library, snapshots, and all the way up to continuous data protection, which of course is the most expensive. And something like continuous data protection also suffers from the fact that if you do get infected with ransomware, your continuous data protection is immediately infected as well. So tape gives you some ways to work around that. It's already widely deployed. Tapes have been around for quite some time, and I know they've been seen as kind of a thing that's going to go away at some point in time, but they probably never will, or at least not until there's something that's substantially beneficial as tape is. It's already in place. We already have a significant customer investment with it. As Eric touched on, it's removable. You can take it off-site. You can keep it offline, and thus protecting yourself from the ransomware and any employee issues that might occur. There's a long archival life of tape. 20 or 30 years is not uncommon, and you have the interoperability that if you do suffer a tape drive failure, you can always put in a second tape drive, even from a different manufacturer, and because of the LTO Ultrium standards, you can be assured that you're able to read your data. And of course, lastly, it's the lower cost, which is much lower than disk still. There are several media rotation schemes that you can put in place. First one we'll talk about is round robin. It's basically a first in, first out. It's the easiest and simplest scheme to implement. However, if you do have some sort of data issue that crops up, you only have backups that go back as far as your first backup, and there's not really any method that tries to help protect you from corruption that might have occurred several months or even several quarters ago. And that's where the grandfather, father, son comes in, or the GFS. You can have 3 or more backup cycles. You can do daily, weekly, and monthly, which is grandfather, father, son. You can add to that quarterly, half yearly, or annual, and you can do that. You can keep your annual tapes for as long as whatever your business needs require, be that HIPAA or some other government mandated backup scheme. And the last one is the Tower of Hanoi, and that's very much like the game that you remember as a child of moving rings back and forth on pegs. And that's actually the fewest number of tapes with a good retention. So it's a nice medium between FIFO, which is very simple, and grandfather, father, son, which can be a little more complicated to implement. There are two different types of backups that Zmanda supports, and that is full backups. That is, you do a full backup every day. It uses the most storage, and so it's a significant customer investment, but it also provides the fastest method back when you have a data recovery need. So at data loss, if you have a full backup every day, you can put that backup in and recover your entire backup all at once. Incremental backups do stay on storage. You don't use as much tape, or disk for that matter, so it saves on storage. But if you do suffer a data loss, say on Thursday, you'll need to first recover your Monday backup and then probably include your Tuesday and Wednesday backups as well, before you have complete recovery of your data. On compression strategies, this has been something that comes up frequently. Where do I put compression? If you're backing up to tape, it's almost always best to go ahead and utilize the hardware compressor that's within the tape drive. It operates at hardware speeds. It doesn't require any CPU overhead of the server or the client that's being backed up. And there's really the only time you'd ever want to put compression on the client is if you have some sort of constraint on your network. And with 10 gig and gig-E networks being fairly common today, that's not as much of a concern as it was 10 years ago or so. If you're backing up to disk, you've got a few options. Some NASs support compression, and if they do, it would probably be best to go ahead and enable it on the NAS device. Otherwise, you're going to want to balance between the capabilities of your backup server and the capabilities of your clients. If the clients are highly capable and your server is not, then it's probably best to go ahead and do the compression on the client. If you do have a heavyweight server, then it's probably better to go ahead and do the compression on that server. And you're going to want to go ahead and pick a compression algorithm that's going to work well on your server. Our customers frequently choose PIGZ as it's one of the better multiprocessor algorithms. And when choosing your compression algorithm, you'll definitely want to make sure you tune it so that sometimes, especially with algorithms like PIGZ, the best compression can take 3 or 4 times as much time as the fastest compression, and the difference between the fastest compression and the best compression is sometimes only 10 or 20%. So you definitely want to make sure that you're utilizing the compression algorithm in a way that meets your storage requirements and your backup window requirements.
Fantastic. That's some great information. I mean, again, just trying to highlight all of the different options that are available to protect your data. I mean, this is the lifeblood of an organization, and we want to ensure that not only is the data being backed up, it's being protected, and it's being able to be restored. Here's an example of kind of where Zmanda and Spectra products fit in a general workflow. Zmanda is the backup software. Spectra provides the hardware. The certification that Zmanda and Spectra have is for all of the Spectra products. It works with our tape libraries, our NAS products, both our Verde and Black Pearl NAS. And then you also have the ability to go to the public cloud. So the public cloud is a great off-site copy. Tape Vault is another great off-site copy that adds in the offline ability as well. But when you bring these two solutions together, you really get centralized management. At its core, that's really what this solution brings to you, is a way to centrally manage all the data across a wide platform of applications and support. And then there's really it's an enterprise class software that matches with our enterprise class hardware. This is what all of the main data users are using. So it is built and designed to be used for hundreds of terabytes, petabytes, exabytes of data, and really can scale out to any capacity that you need. And it's based on open source, open standards. You don't have to worry about not being able to access your data if one of the partners is out of business or decides to leave, and really a low cost of ownership. I mean, tape provides the lowest cost storage medium you can have. And when you're storing petabytes of data, it's important to have something that is affordable. We hear so many times that data is growing faster than people's budgets are. And we know that, and there's different ways to attack that problem, and tape is really one of the most viable ways to do that. Dennis, you want to touch on some of the certification results and what the integration looks like?
Sure. So last summer, we went through a multi-week process of certifying Zmanda with SpectraLogic storage offerings. We tested the stack library. You can see there we had one test case that was skipped, and that's only because It requires the lack of a barcode. We also tested the Verity NAS device as well as the T-Series tape libraries. And we found that excellent interoperability with all of them. We did full test cases, including backup speeds, recoveries, backup sets of varying sizes. And it really, everything came through with flying colors. Next.
And so this is just, oh, yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
Oh, no,
Sorry.
that's okay. No, please, Eric.
Yeah, so we were just, again, kind of a recap as to the partnership and, why we felt that it was important to bring this message to everybody. It's, it's a great solution. The fact that Zmanda and Spectra went through the effort to do the certification, do the testing, confirm that all of the hardware and software play well together. We've really been able to deliver a high-speed, highly compatible, affordable solution that really is built for data protection, built to protect the data that you have and the data that you're going to need in the future. So we have some contact information. Dennis, if you'd like to touch on how they can get in touch with Zmanda.
Yes, you can always reach us at ZmandaSales@Betzold.com. You can also go to network.zmanda.com, and there you can sign up for an account with us. But probably the easiest way is just at ZmandaSales@Betzold.com.
Yep, and you can reach Spectra. You can go to our website at spectralogic.com. You can be reached at email at sales@spectralogic.com. If you don't know your sales rep in your area, just reach out either by phone or email, and we will put you in touch with a rep that is in your area that specializes in your field of business. And that brings us to questions. So we've got a couple questions that have come in, so I will go ahead and ask those. And if you have any other additional questions as this Q&A begins, please, again, feel free to type those into the question box, and we'll begin right now. So first one that came in is, how long does backed up data need to be stored? Dennis, you want to touch on that one?
Sure. It really is a business need. Certain government requirements for emails might require you to store emails for, I think it's 3 years. I know for HIPAA and other requirements are even greater. If you're a lawyer, you may want to store all of your records really forever. If you're running a small business that is selling parts and pieces, maybe you don't need to save your data for as long and don't need to go back as far in time. It's really a business need that drives how long data needs to be saved, or a government reporting requirements need, as opposed to anyone hard and fast, everyone should save their data for 7 years or something. Although I think that's how long you have to save your tax returns.
All right. Here's another one. Why not use disk mirroring for data backup? Dennis, that probably is in your guys' wheelhouse there.
You can use disk mirroring for data backup. However, that doesn't protect you from things like ransomware and things like an employee that accidentally deletes a file or damages a file. So anything that happens in real time like that is going to be affected the same way that you got into trouble in the first place. So if you're infected with ransomware, then your mirrored backups are immediately infected with ransomware as well. So that kind of gets back to that rule of 3, 2, 1. You want to have 3 copies of your data, and you want to have it on different media, not just on the same disk. And then you also want to have something that's offline or offsite or both.
Fantastic. Here's one around the 3, 2, 1 rule, and it talks about why the two different storage medias. So a great reason for that is that you're not stuck to one type of technology. By introducing 2 different types of technology, you have protection around the technology itself. There are malicious things that have happened in the past where hard drive designers have put in a line of code that will inadvertently or intentionally delete data, say 6 years down the road. If all of your data is held on that one type of disk drive, it will be deleted. So it's a way of protecting your data so that there's not one point of failure, you have an additional second point of failure. So having data on multiple different types of storage medium really is a strongly recommended best practice. And then we have one more that kind of ties into that as well, and it's how does an offline copy prevent you from ransomware? And this one, it's really at the core of ransomware is a hack that comes in. Somebody comes in remotely to attack your data. They're not in your data center. They don't physically have access to anything. They have just gone in through the internet connection that you have. So if the data is not actually available online, then they have no way to access it. So by having a tape sitting on a shelf or in a vault somewhere, not in a tape drive, then they have no way to access the data. And that's how it really wraps itself around that protection. And it's a term that's called air gap, because there actually is a gap between how far a hacker or somebody can penetrate into your environment. There's a gap between that and that final place where the tape lies. We got another one coming in here. What is the best backup schedule? Dennis, you want to touch on that?
It's again that's kind of up to your business needs, your backup window, and your recovery needs. That kind of gets back to the incremental full question. If you have so much data that you can only do full backups once a week, then that kind of dictates what your backup schedule is. You're gonna start your backups at 6 o'clock on Friday night and run them through the weekend and hopefully get them completed before 6 o'clock on Monday morning when everything starts to wake back up again and you're doing things. If you've got less data that can be backed up in, say, just an overnight period and you can do full backups overnight, then you might want to consider doing that instead, simply because if you do get in a situation where you need to recover data, having a full backup that's only a day old is going to be the fastest way to recover, and you'll lose the least amount of data or work as a result of any data recovery requirement. So scheduling is really up to how much data you have, how fast your environment is, what speeds, backup speeds are you capable of, and your backup window. How much time do you have to actually do your backups? Most people don't do their backups during the day when business is active, simply because it tends to slow things down and the data is actively changing during the day. So normally you'll pick an evening or weekend time to do backups.
All right, I think we have one more question, and I believe this is talking about the Zmanda software. Can it support and can it take backups of GRT, Microsoft Dynamics, Microsoft Exchange 2016, and SAP running on Oracle?
SAP on Oracle, no. On Exchange, yes, we have a plugin for the Exchange server. And the first one, I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand that. Could you repeat that, Eric?
It's a GRT. I'm not sure what that is.
Let's take a quick look here. Is that let's see.
Granular recovery test? Not sure, but whoever posed that question, you can feel free to reach out to either Spectra or Zmanda if you have additional questions on that. There's a lot of different details and software packages and applications, and to really know what fits into your environment and where everything plugs together, best thing to do is reach out and let us know. And it looks like we have one more. If a backup data is large and spread across multiple tapes, is there a way to make the restore quicker? So I can handle that. So there are multiple different ways. More tape drives is something, if you have additional tape drives, that's one way to read data off of multiple tapes at any given time. So that's ideally the best way is that you can have additional tape drives to scale up your performance. If you are limited on the tape drives that you have and you need to bring data back, SpectraLogic hardware has technology that is built into it that speeds up the recovery on tape, not only on LTO but on its TS tape technology as well. There are algorithms that have been built and software that's in the product that is speeds up the way of finding and accessing the data on tape. So there's a lot of different information about that on our website. You can reach out to our sales reps as well to help kind of gain more information on that. But yes, there are a lot of new technologies out there in tape. Tape's been around for a long time, but it continues to progress, not just in its speeds and feeds of capacity and performance, but as well as the technology around it. Finding efficient ways to seek data on tape, restore, and then bring the data back to being available. So, Dennis, is there anything else you'd like to add before we let everyone go today?
Yes, I would. I misspoke. I misunderstood the Oracle question. We actually do have an Oracle SQL plugin as well.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, this will be available online. It will be posted to the SpectraLogic website. It will also go out to anybody who has registered. So I would like to, on behalf of SpectraLogic, thank you guys for joining. And Dennis, thank you for joining us from Zmanda to share your side of it. And thank you guys and have a great day.
Thank you.